For his speech are in, and Trump's talkathon saw an 11% decrease from last year. Wow. I mean, Donald Trump is really dragging down broadcast. You know what? I think was going on? People may not like watching Trump, but they do like watching me not like watching Trump.
There is something deeply telling about that number. A sitting president delivers the State of the Union, one of the most watched political events of the year, and 11% fewer Americans tuned in compared to the year before. Not because the speech was hard to find, not because people were busy, because people are exhausted. There is a documented psychological phenomenon called news fatigue, where constant exposure to chaos, contradiction, and controversy causes the public to simply disconnect. And what those Nielsen numbers are actually measuring is not a preference for one television host over another. They are measuring how many Americans have reached their breaking point. The audience is not shrinking because politics became less important. The audience is shrinking because the person at the center of it all has made politics feel completely out of their control.
Smaller Middle East story. It looks like Trump's going to invade Iran. This week, the Pentagon shifted more than 150 military aircraft to bases in Europe and the Middle East. And on top of that, the Navy has sent roughly a third of all active U.S. ships to the region.
A third of all active United States Navy ships, 150 military aircraft repositioned across 2 continents. These are not small movements. These are not routine exercises. When a nation quietly repositions that scale of military power without a formal declaration, without a congressional debate, without a public address explaining why the absence of explanation is itself the story. The American public was not consulted. Congress was not briefed. No case was made to the people whose sons and daughters would be sent to fight. Senator Mark Kelly was asked directly, "What does the United States want and why now?" His answer was 4 words: "I don't think we know." That is a senator on the Armed Services Committee saying out loud that a war may be starting and nobody has told him why. That should be the headline on every front page in the country.
Slightly undercut by the fact that after bombing Iran's nuclear sites 8 months ago, Trump said this.
I also obliterated Iran's nuclear hopes.
Obliterated Iran's nuclear enrichment capability. Totally obliterated the nuclear potential.
Totally, as I say, obliterated. We obliterated it.
Which can only mean that somehow Iran's nuclear program has been reobliterated.
8 months ago, the American public was told the threat was eliminated. The word used was not reduced, not damaged, not set back, obliterated, completely and totally obliterated. That word was chosen deliberately. It was designed to signal finality, mission accomplished, threat gone, move on. And now, without any acknowledgement of what changed, without any explanation of how an obliterated nuclear program rebuilt itself in 8 months, without any accountability for the original claim, the administration is preparing to strike again. This is the part that matters beyond the politics. When a government tells its people a problem is solved, and then quietly prepares for war over that same problem 8 months later, it is not just a contradiction. It is a demonstration that the public was never being told the truth to begin with. And the question that nobody in that administration is being asked is simple. If the first strike solved nothing, what makes anyone believe the second one will be different?
Trump's Surgeon General nominee and mom who substitutes butter with applesauce because she's a freaking nightmare, Casey Means.
The Surgeon General of the United States is not a ceremonial title. This is the person responsible for communicating public health policy to over 330 million Americans. This is the voice the country is supposed to trust during a pandemic, during a public health crisis, during any moment when accurate medical information is the difference between life and death. The position exists because science is complicated and most people need someone credible to translate it. And the nominee for that position does not hold an active medical license. She has publicly expressed skepticism about vaccines, the single most successful public health intervention in human history. She has written openly about hearing internal voices. This is not a criticism of any one person's wellness journey. People are free to live however they choose. But the standard for the top medical authority in the most powerful country on earth cannot be a wellness influencer with an expired license and a history of hearing voices. The people who will suffer from bad public health guidance are not the people making these appointments. They never are.
Means went to medical school but dropped out of her medical residency and does not have an active license to treat patients. It's weirder, in one of her books, Dr. Means wrote that she took psychedelic mushrooms for the first time after she was inspired by an internal voice that whispered to her.
This is the part of the show that feels like comedy, and it is, but there is something underneath the absurdity worth sitting with for a moment. On the same night that America learned a third of its Navy was being repositioned toward Iran, that its Surgeon General nominee dropped out of medical school and hears internal voices, and that Congress is busy questioning people with no connection to the biggest criminal case of the decade, the camel Botox story exists. And it got airtime. Because at a certain point, when the serious news becomes too overwhelming, too contradictory, too deliberately confusing, the absurd starts to feel like relief. That is not an accident. Distraction has always been the most effective tool available to people in power. And the question worth asking is not why a camel beauty contest made the news. The question is what did not make the news on the same night. Because somewhere behind the camel jokes, decisions were being made that will affect millions of people who were too exhausted to notice.